Let's talk more about the path forward. We're joined by GOP political consultant Mike Madrid and former U.S. Senator Heidi Heitkamp. Great to have you both here. Former Senator, I'll begin with you, if I may. As we watch this all playing out, what is it telling us? The rising number of defection, or those saying that he should step aside? The families of Biden's apparent insistence up to now that he is not going to. Do you expect him to step aside this weekend?
It's hard to know, but this is his decision. But I always look at what you don't see. You don't see Jill on the campaign trail. If they were really serious about staying in, they would have sent her out as a surrogate. You don't see a lot of people stepping up and saying, "Joe, stay in." You don't see what you would normally see with this kind of dust up. And you're seeing, over the last couple weeks, there's been a very quiet discussion. You saw Mark Warner, that didn't fall apart. It just fell apart publicly. You saw what Michael Bennet said. And so there's been this kind of hint. And Nancy Pelosi gave everybody permission to say it out loud. And that's what you're seeing right now. And I think the president is definitely weighing his options at this point. And I think anyone who says that he's not considering getting out isn't reading the right tea leaves.
Mike, do you think he could we get a Sunday night address to the nation saying, I've decided to step aside, I'm not going to run for re-election? And delegates, that you can vote your conscience?
Look, there's no question we could. The question really is, and I think the debate within the Democratic Party is, should there be a change when the potential of the variables of an unknown or certainly an unvetted candidate could have much, much greater significant downside than upside? I think that's what's being weighed right now. I think the president's clearly hearing a lot of the public concerns, certainly from within his own party. But I also, just today you saw Hakeem Jeffries give a pretty unequivocal statement of support. You heard the Congressional Hispanic Caucus's political arm coming out in support, unequivocal. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says that she's with them. So I don't think it's accurate to say that there isn't support being rallied around the president. At this point, I think the party and the party leadership really have to take some self-inventory and understand that time is now really on Biden's side. Every day that goes by becomes exponentially more difficult and problematic by making a change, when the fundamentals of this race, by all estimations, are absolutely fixable, considering it's mid-July.
So you think it's fixable? So I was going to ask if Trump did enough last night to kind of, solidify the case and try to shut the door to the, basically try to say it's over, no matter what happens at this point, with the right message, with the right, you name it. Did he, Mike, did he do that successfully?
I think this was probably the worst acceptance speech in my 30 years of politics and being at Republican conventions.
The worst?
But absolutely. It was incoherent. It was rambling. It was long. It was difficult to follow. And frankly, it contradicted every part of the messaging from the previous 3 days, which was to demonstrate consistency, stability, and strength. On that level, he failed unequivocally. So look, I don't think there's anybody other than the Democratic Party had to be cheering last night, saying this guy is absolutely beatable, because he is.
Senator, build on that, but also for the some of us on the East Coast might have gone to bed at 11 p.m. and caught only the first part that was widely praised, where apparently went on for another hour or so.
Well, I think there's probably a lot of people about 3 minutes or 4 minutes after the first 20 who said, "I'm out. This is not turning the page." I think that the former president had an opportunity to really cement a lead in a way that we haven't seen for a long, long time in challenging an incumbent president. He did not do that. In fact, he offered a lot of hope and a lot of, I think, understanding to the Democratic Party about what's at stake here. And he probably did more to unify Democrats last night than Joe Biden could have done if he got up and made a speech. And so I couldn't agree with Mike more.
That's exactly what I find interesting, Senator. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there. But so you might have thought in the wake of that, perhaps the calls for Biden to step down would stop, or perhaps we'd come out Friday morning with a more unified message, unless you're telling me that the message is, no, Biden is going to step aside and it's going to happen. And what we're seeing now confirms that.
Well, let's just step back. Hakeem Jeffries knows that this decision has not been made. And so you aren't going to go out there and say that the president is incapable of leading. You may say, I want you to step down. You've been a great president. We need to have somebody who would have a better shot at winning. But the bottom line is that you can't look at that debate performance as a Democrat and not wonder, are we going to see another event like that closer to the election? If I were the Republicans, I would be furious that debate took place in June when there was time to actually have this conversation. But make no mistake, Donald Trump reminded Democrats why even if Joe Biden stays in this race, we will be united, or Democrats will be united going forward.
Mike, what would you do if you were the Democratic Party here to take most advantage of any opening you just might have been given?
Well, look, I think the senator outlined this just perfectly. That's exactly right. We are unfortunately in a time in American history where people are motivated far more by what they are against than candidates that they support. And that allows the bases of each party to overlook very significant, very deep flaws in their own candidates. But when put up side by side, having a feeble, aging president in Joe Biden or an incoherent, crazed, extremist like Donald Trump, Biden's going to win that 99 times out of 100.
But you think Biden wins that 99 times out of 100?
Yeah, no question.
All right. You're the Republican. All right, we'll leave it there. Mike Madrid, Heidi Heitkamp, very much appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us today.